Ahoy ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there, and welcome aboard the DeckTales podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catlin, and this is the show where we set sail into the captivating world of ship life. Most of the time, delving into the best and worst experiences of the incredible crew members who called the open sea their workplace, but I'm open to the odd exception as well. Whether we're navigating stunning destinations to weathering unexpected storms, our guests all have stories to tell that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed an unexpected tear. So if you're a seasoned cruiser eagerly awaiting your next embarkation, or just curious as to what goes on at sea, DeckTales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is Mr. Liam Edwards, a former British Navy officer cadet who now works over at Buckingham Palace. He was good enough to spend some time talking to me about some of his antics over the years, especially as he'd just gotten back from Germany to watch England play in the football Euros. So let's anchor up and have a little listen.
Hello.
Ahoy ahoy shipmate!
Hi.
How's it going, Mr. Edwards?
Good. Going very well. Can you see me all right? Am I all...
Yes, I can hear you. You're all in white, which is great. You know, the whole background, the shirt, the background t-shirt, the shirt next to you hanging up, everything's white.
I think I'm like camouflage.
You trying to hide from something?
Trying to hide from the German hooligans that I upset the other day.
Oh dear. Well, because this isn't going out, Liam, because this isn't going out for a while, it doesn't really matter whatever is going on in Europe right now, because by the time this comes out, no one will care who's won.
My escape plan will be done and dusted by the time this comes out. So, yes.
But so, Liam, we should say, for the record or for the benefit of those listening or watching the clip or whatever, the way we know each other is through our many years working on set together in the capacity of supporting artists, which is basically the background extras or, you know, the people that make the scene come to life. What are some of the things that spring to mind that we've worked on together, apart from the obvious two that are, well, Napoleon and Aquaman 2? I think those are the ones I kind of associate you with, but countless other days on different productions over the years I've seen you on.
Yeah, I definitely remember the one where I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. Wasn't it like in the Hilton Hotel or somewhere in London?
That sounds very suspicious, Liam.
What were we doing at the Hilton Hotel for in the morning? No, I think you just are very delirious, aren't you, at that time of the morning when you get a call time. But I do remember I was with Bailey Prickett, another fellow artist, and you bumped into me.
Oh, yeah, we were protesting.
That's it, yeah.
And I was covered in blood.
Jackal or something, isn't it?
The Jackal. Yeah. And then, of course, last weekend, it was Haven. I think it's
Haven.
It was only last weekend, and I forgot.
But look how pro we are.
Yeah. It was nice to get out of the house from editing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's been such a lovely week for the weather. I just hope it holds out by the time I'm done with my work.
Yeah, it's been all right, isn't it? I mean, today's been quite nice.
Yeah, well, it's been like this all week.
Late 20s is hopefully by mid next week. So
what was it in Germany?
It was actually surprisingly nice. It started off a bit overcast, but then during the day when we was in the main square, it was really nice sunshine. It spat a little bit, but wasn't too bad overall. So can't complain.
What was it like in the stadium?
In the stadium, it was about 1,000 degrees because they closed the roof. And
Why?
they got complaints about this. Well, they said because they were expecting torrential rain that would have flooded the pitches, but
Never happened.
Didn't happen at all. And then they didn't open the roof. I don't know if that because it took too long to set up or whatever. So I can kind of see why the England boys, were struggling the other day. I was nearly passing out after celebrating the Harry Kane goal.
It's not like we had an advantage or they had an advantage. Both teams suffered equally.
Yeah. I just finished watching the Portugal game and about 6 people ran on the pitch individually.
Yeah, I saw a message about that. Why were they invading?
They were just trying to get to Ronaldo and get selfies. But they would do it, and then another 10 minutes, someone else would. And it comes to a point that's funny for the first couple of times, but then when there's like 6, then it goes to show that the security's not been that great. Public transport's not been that great. There's been a lot of things about this tournament logistically. I know Germany usually get praise for their logistics and stuff, but I think even Ronaldo, who's usually quite nice with people running on the pitch, I think he was getting a little bit cheesed off. But hey,
you would.
And I think Ronaldo, this is 20 years since his first Euros. I think it's 2004 his first
What
year.
about Pepe? He's even older.
Yeah, he's Pepe. Is Pepe 40 yet?
I think he's in his 40s. Yeah,
That's mental, isn't it?
Or-
Like you'd expect keepers to get that long in their career, but players, that's quite.
I think Pepe is definitely in his 40s, Liam. Yeah, but he aspires us all, inspires us all. What was it I saw? Dick Van Dyke was nominated for Oscar, wasn't he?
Well, no. So Dick Van Dyke, what's that? It's the award where you win all four, isn't it? So he's
EGOT.
EGOT. That's it. So yeah, it's Emmy, Grammy, then he's won the Tony, but he hasn't won the Oscar, and he just recently won the Tony, I think it was. I could be wrong.
Now he's got everything except the Oscar.
Except the Oscar, and he said the interview. He said, "You going for the Oscar, even at this grand old age?" He said, "Yeah, why not? Let's do it." He's so there, he's so present, and
he's 98.
You do admire that. So
he's 98, and I saw on Instagram today a post that said that Spaceballs 2 is in the works.
Really?
Do you know Spaceballs?
Yes, yeah.
So
God, I watched that. That's ages.
So Mel Brooks, he's 97.
Yeah.
Still got all his marbles, mate.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Clint Eastwood's still directed, isn't he? I think he's still pumping stuff. I mean, it's inspirational.
There's hope for us yet, Liam.
Yes. We'll be next work in our late 90s.
Well, hopefully I would have landed a supporting artist feature or two by then.
Yes.
You've done all right. You get your feature, or even if you don't get your feature, you somehow seem to land a red carpet invitation.
It's all about who you know, not what you know. That's what I say to people.
Yeah, bollocks to Hollywood, mate.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, it's a bit of fun. It gets me out and about, and I've met some lovely people on it over the years, and that's why I keep doing it. It's kind of addictive in a similar way to what it's like to working on these things here, the ships. For the cruising sector, it's what has been described as golden handcuffs, because you're going here, you're going there, you're doing entertainment, if you work in that department, and it's hard to give up that lifestyle. But with the Navy, and by the way, I got this wallpaper kind of plastered up just for you.
Yeah, wish I had something now. It's like,
well, it's not the focus. It's just there. When people are scrolling, what do they normally stop for? Colours and boobies. And unfortunately, I'm an A cup. So
I'm pretty you.
You're a B. So if we just talk about boobs, then we've got content that will basically zhuzh up the algorithm.
Go up in cup size week in, week out. That's all it means.
So you are not a cruise ship worker. You're the first person on DeckTales who doesn't come from the hospitality industry at sea or any cruise ship experience. What is it you used to do, Liam?
So I studied at Oxford Brookes University. During my time there, I was part of the Oxford University Royal Naval Unit. And I was an officer cadet there from 2019 to 2023, late 2023. And yeah, every Thursday we'd turn up every week to do training sessions. And throughout that time, I spent a lot of time on naval ships, ranging from P2000s, which are the training vessels used in the Royal Navy, up to the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, RFA Tide Force, on expeditions, be it around, going from Plymouth to the Isle of Wight, and then from the P2000s, we mainly go around Europe. So be around Denmark, Germany, Sweden, around those kind of countries. So yeah, I did that for just nearly 4 years.
So the cadet program, the officer cadet program, was at Oxford Brookes.
Well, so it's the Oxford University Naval Unit, covers Oxford Brookes University, Oxford University, and Reading University. So if you attended any of those three unis, you could go to Oxford Naval Unit. They also have like Devon, Ernu. They have
okay,
Manchester, Ernu. Yeah, so it's all around the country basically.
But you're not established, or because you're from where exactly? I forgot. Sorry,
I'm Bexley, Southeast London.
Bexley. So you would commute to Oxford? Never?
No, that was during my time when I had my student house in Oxford. So it was basically, I don't know, half an hour walk from where I was living at the time.
And how often would you go out on a ship?
So that this is the thing we always laugh about. Oxford, ironically, doesn't actually have that much open water. It
Oh
has,
yeah.
Oxford and Thames, doesn't it? But that's not getting anything through there. Where like the Devon Ernie, I think they'd practically be out on the sea like every week, basically.
Mm.
So you always were challenged in that. But we did have Portsmouth quite near to us. I can tell you one of the ships I stayed on, which was pretty cool, which was HMS Bristol,
Mm.
which is no longer continued. But it was actually one of the ships that was used in the Falklands War.
When did that get scrapped?
So I believe it got scrapped the year after because our Ernu, so there's like Liverpool Ernu, we have a sports weekend every year, and we all stayed on the ship. And I think it's the following year it got discontinued basically, and we were the final ever Ernus to stay on the ship.
Okay.
I believe it's not actually been scrapped though yet, and we're in 2024, so it's still docked there. There's just no one there. Yeah, so the HMS Bristol, that was pretty cool because I think when you're walking around it, and obviously when I'm walking around trying to find the loo in the middle of the night, because you have to climb up the steps and walk down the alleyway and then walk up this way and down that way. And you're thinking like the history that we would have run through some of these walls. And the beds were possibly the most uncomfortable thing I've ever stayed on in my life. Yeah, it's literally like the 3 rows. I went top, and if I woke up in the night, I would have literally headbutted the metal tube that was above me, and that did happen a couple of times. Which made it even worse was the air ventilation, and I had a guy next to me who puked everywhere, so we all had to breathe in the smell of puke while he was clearing up at 2 a.m.
Was that because of rough weather?
No, that was just because we all went out partying because it was our last night of sports night in Portsmouth.
Oh, cool.
Typical sailors at sea, not even technically at sea. We were docked up, but yeah, there was a few freshers that couldn't handle their drink, and a lot of us felt the draft of that and the snoring that goes with it as well.
Well, so hang on, let me ask: if you're a officer cadet, you would like to think as an officer of some merit, you'd have a bit more of your own space.
Well, technically, we were all officer cadets. You would have sometimes the midshipmans. So the midshipmans were kind of like the ones who would run the units, who were kind of, you had like a D SMID and a SMID. So D SMID is basically like second in command of our age. So there'd always be a uni student doing that. You'd obviously have the senior officers who were part of the RN full time. They would obviously give us training sessions every Thursday, but they stayed in hotels where we stayed on the ship. But we'd always have one Royal Marine guarding the ship. Not that any person for any life of matter would come near the ship because it was miles into the base. It's just nothing going on there, so quiet. But yeah, that was probably an incredible experience. I've done many more expeditions as well, but that was one that was the first one I did in 2019.
It's funny because when you're listing all of these different like job titles, like the midshipman and the Royal Marine, my reference point at this moment in time, it just keeps going back to Master and Commander Russell Crowe on the old wooden Navy ships during the Napoleonic War.
Yeah.
It's a great film. But so you didn't have your own space. You literally were mucking in with everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the other trips I've done later on the show, but especially with HMS Bristol, for the example, yeah, we was all pretty much the same ranks, but if a lieutenant or whoever, they would stay in a nice 5-star hotel in Portsmouth and have no back problems to come the following day. But it got you into the naval. We just passed out of training at HMS Raleigh. We've completed our swim test. Obviously, that's down in Devon. So that was always a place that I had fond memories there, because the one thing about HMS Raleigh is that you have to march everywhere. So you literally have to you're going to the shop, you got to march. You got to march back. And me and my friend Jago, we woke up at the crack of dawn, walked all the way over to the cost cutter, off-license shop on site for the senior officers to say, oh, it's not open on Sundays. And we were just like, oh, brilliant. And then just had to march all the way back with the senior officer and feeling like a bit of an idiot.
What were you trying to score? Just some breakfast?
Yeah, just saying like a Lucasade or something. Because scran at the Royal Navy is, if it fills you up, doesn't it? It's not the...
it does the job.
Yeah, it gives you a feel for your day. And I think at the start you're a bit like, ugh. But then you're just so tired and lethargic, probably weeks into training, where I actually met a trainee, and I knew her from Twitter. I never met her in person. And then I think it was like 5 a.m. in the Royal Navy cafeteria. She was called Eleanor. I think she's in the submarines now, actually. I think, if I'm right in saying. But We just randomly bumped into each other, and I knew her from Twitter. And I spoke to her loads. We never met in real life. And it's like, Eleanor. She's like, Liam, what the hell are you doing here? Just like in the middle of nowhere on a training site for the Royal Navy. And she was about 12 weeks in. And yeah, they all looked quite tired and sleep deprived. So I can imagine you just eat what you can get.
With the submarine corps, I thought that they were men exclusive.
You know what? The Submariners, when you're going to probably ask me a lot of knowledge about the RN, it's not really much I know about. All I know is where do they do their training? I think they also do their training at HMS Raleigh, but obviously a lot of our kind of trident warfare is mainly all based up in Scotland. All the submarines up there. Is it Devonport? I'll have to research that. I can't remember their actual base.
If you don't know, it's fine, because I'm not by any means an expert. I just thought I'd read somewhere that they weren't allowed on submarines, women, because it was something to do with the compression underwater. Yeah. That meant if they were at sea for a long period of time, then they couldn't go on to bear children or something. It was bad for their. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I believe that's now changed, but I do know about that report and article that you are talking about. But I'm pretty sure. I mean, some probably our viewers listening will probably might know the answer.
All six of them.
All six. There's going to be a 0 by the end of this show, and I'm going to make sure of it.
Well, we're growing steadily. I'm new to this. I was almost in the Navy myself a couple years back. I don't know if I ever told you this.
No.
But because I've got asthma and because stupidly I smoke, I didn't pass the physical. Yeah. And I was kind of missing being away at sea. And I thought, well, maybe, as it didn't work out, I kind of thought maybe I could try something else. Yeah. So I applied. I went through all the, what do you call it, tests, isometric tests.
Yeah.
All that testing.
Yeah. Did you do the swim test? Did you get to?
I didn't actually. I think they just discounted me because I declared that I'd got asthma.
The medical thing in the RN is still incredibly ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, my friend Theo, I'll never forget, he's way more fitter than I am, like miles more fitter than I am. I've been doing too much extra work over the years and eating too many cakes.
That's my excuse as well.
Yeah, Theo, he just had, it wasn't even that bad, but very small amounts of eczema on his arms. Very, very small amounts. That was a no from the Navy straight off, and he couldn't go away to sea. They let him do the training like on the Thursday, but I'm like, why would you give up your time to do something which has the potential to lead into joining full time or joining the R&R?
Yeah, it's mad though.
And I'm like, but it's the same with the army and stuff like that. But it's because they deem it as if it flares up and you're away on active duty, then it comes to a point that they might have to chop your arm off if you get sepsis or infection. I just think, wow, that's like. I don't think really that, like, if you're in a battle with another country, I don't think eczema is probably like the last thing you're talking about. Incoming missiles coming at you, but it's
no, I know. But with the naval application, I declared it, and then I had to do like a peak flow weekly, what do you call it, submission of my recorded scores. So that got back to me, and they were like, "Yeah, no, sorry, you can't be in the Navy." And I think I was at a time in my life, Liam, when I was quite low. This is before I went to uni, before I started doing extra work. I was in with a bad crowd. So I saw that advert, sure, I was born in Carlisle, but I was born in the Navy, in the Royal Navy. So I was like, oh, I'm sold. I'm not from Carlisle, but baby, I could be from the Royal Navy. So I applied for the role of what I thought sounded like the best thing. And when they told me I couldn't be in it, I was like, with friends like mine, I'm kind of glad I didn't get the job, because I would have never had a quiet day ever again, because the role I was applying for was seaman specialist.
Hello, sailor.
So
don't try and saying like, oh, it had so many different things. I think you just really wanted to go for that role.
Yeah, I was hoping it might open doors. Honestly, it is such an we make jokes about that, well, people obviously in the industry or people who are in the forces, they're so tired of that joke, it doesn't affect them anymore. But people outside, you can't back off of deployment and they're like, oh, hello, sailor, it's straight away. Did you experience any of that from people that a bit laddie, that kind of inherent stereotyping immediately as soon as you got off the boat?
Yeah, no, I think my friends they just always say, Liam, we're never really sure what you're doing for a living or what you're studying. It all just amuses us because I feel like I'm a man who has fingers in many pies, and I think the RM was just always one of those times. I do remember when
was that fingers in many pies a euphemism?
that's your dirty wine again, Sammy. You need to watch.
Sorry. You do, but this is like on-set banter. You do have lots of fingers in many pies, and we'll talk about some of those as well. But so your friends were a bit more like, oh, we don't know what you're up to, Liam. You're always doing.
I mean, to be fair, it's weird. Oxford Brookes is actually quite a kind of, so say like pro-military. Yeah, I mean, it's typically quite a private school kids, apart from myself, private school kids kind of uni. And obviously then probably 9 times out of 10, a lot of families had someone who's been in war or someone who's served. Quite a lot of my friends had family members who served, be it Army, RAF or Navy. So they're always quite respectful and quite interested about it. And a lot of people I know then joined up. I mean, the OUTC, which is the Army version, that was way more popular because what do people want to do? They want to fire guns, and you don't really do that in the Navy. I didn't really want to fire a gun. I just wanted the great drink. I'm a typical sailor, like you just want a cheap bar and get the rum and everything like that. I really wasn't bothered about firing guns or anything.
Well, was it also about kind of getting to travel aspect as well?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny when you mentioned the advert about, I was born in Carlisle, but I was made in the Royal Navy. And they'll show the sailor that he's in Tokyo, that he's here, that he's there. But I do speak to a lot of, because there's this whole thing about recruitment in the military at the moment. And, I speak to many full-time sailors, be it if they're officers or not. And they say it's very much good marketing. It's very much that you might go from the Isle of Wight to Plymouth and back again. Like it's not as, they might do big expeditions maybe to the Gulf, but they said it's very rare that you might, go to America unless you're on like the QE or the Prince of Wales ships, the big, the big ships, that will go around the world. That's the only time you would. So there is this whole balance with recruitment, fair wages, because the wages, let's be honest, if you're not joining as an officer, they're not the best.
They're like 12, 13 a year or something, stupidly sort of low.
If you join in as a rating, I think it's like 18, I think, a year.
Okay, yeah. It's gone up over the years. I can't remember what it was when I even tried.
But I think it's just like living
10 years ago.
Yeah, it's like living accommodation. Like it's not the best.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you are asking these people that if we did get into the shit, basically, you're asking them to put their lives down and try and
be on the front line.
So, yeah, I mean, back to the original question about no, my friends are always very interested, especially when we used to do the Remembrance Sunday marches through Oxford. And they were always great memories from my uni days where we literally have thousands of people down each side. And because I was one of the tallest, basically in the RN, you were always at the end of each side. So they even meant you was probably marching up or marching back right at the front.
You're like a human bookend.
Yeah, basically. And I was always on the left-hand side. And I was always the one usually marching back because of the height order. And that's the worst time. Marching forward's fine. Marching back is not fine because you've been standing for an hour and a half still. Then you somehow got to get your legs in gear and get marching all at the same time. And that's not easy. And I'm very much a visual person that if I just follow someone, I can keep in tune. But I'm 6'1". So my strides always used to be a lot longer than maybe the guy behind me because he's got to do double time. So I've got to like side eye the person next to me basically and not without like looking to try and keep in tune, which I think pretty much all of them I did a pretty good job. I think apart from the last one where I had to like kick the back of my heel to get back in time again.
Oh, that little kind of kickball change.
That's the one. Yeah, very, very Navy-esque,
naval version of Strictly Come Dancing. Strictly Come Marching.
Doing a bit of a paso double, as they say.
Very good. Very good.
Yes. Years of watching Strictly. We hopefully we'll get invited one day. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, my friends were very supportive about it. But there's a lot, and we'll talk about it later on. But there's a lot within the RN that the recruitment of staff isn't at its greatest at the moment.
Well, the recruitment thing, that just reminded me when I went to Warsash down in Southampton Maritime Academy. This was 2007. I can't remember the year exactly off the top of my head, but I went down there for some training. I think like basic firefighting was involved, and they made a mistake when I got there. They put me up in the captain's accommodation by some miracle. So when I came out for a smoke and this like platoon of Navy cadets went walking past, they all about turned and give me the salute. And I was like, yep, carry on.
Yeah.
And then they called me up later and was like, "Oh yeah, we made a mistake." I was like, "No shit." So they put me in with the cadets, and there was like all these kids comparatively to myself who were there as like young cadets in training, and they were like, "When I grow up, I'm going to be a captain." I was like, "Yep, okay, great."
Yeah.
And then I asked them questions about their experiences at sea, and they, "Oh, we've been all over the world. Yeah, we didn't hear. What was your favorite place?" "Oh, we didn't get off the ship." No,
Yeah.
we went there, but we didn't get off and go there. So it was like we were there, but we weren't really there. Right. Okay. Join the Navy, they said. Travel the world, they said. Doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to get to go hiking the Appalachian Trail. It's very much.
I say to all my friends, I say, if you want to watch a great documentary, I think it was something Warship. It was on BBC Two. It was during the whole time of the pandemic and everything like that. And that was an awful time to be a sailor in the RN because you still had to be deployed on missions. But if one person near you contracted COVID, you had to stay in your cabin for one whole week.
Yeah.
That is like, and not just you'd be sharing the cabin with 6 other people, and you couldn't leave unless it's to go to the bathroom and back again. So you don't see any lights for a whole week. And that must be, you get your dinners given to you, you get tested every day.
Yeah.
That must be hard. And I think actually, tragically, one chap took his own life on, I can't remember what ship it was, HMS. I can't remember the ship
Doesn't
name.
matter. It happened on the ships as well, the cruise ships as well.
Yeah. And that was just because of, I think they were saying a bit deeper in that example, but being COVID and confined for long periods of time, it sent people to Lally as it would.
Not allowed to go ashore, even if you weren't infected.
Yes.
So you're stranded on the sort of in no man's land.
Yeah, they went to Japan. It was all sold to them. They were on the QE, the Queen Elizabeth, and they were going to get off and see Japan, have a great time. Then there was an arrangement where they were going to be allowed off the duration, but I think COVID got worse in Japan and the government changed it at the last minute.
Well, that's where there was that cruise ship that had the outbreak. The Diamond Princess was in Japan, and that was the biggest outbreak outside of Wuhan, where we all kind of went, "Oh, look at that thing that's happening over there." That was like our first example where we were like, "Look, there's loads of Western guests on that ship. We'll see how they turn out, and then we'll know how serious stuff is going to be." So the Navy guys, they were there, and then they were locked down on their ship. Do you know how long they were there for?
What, the RN guys? They were there for 1 week, but they couldn't get off, so they were just docked up.
But they were deployed, and they weren't allowed to go ashore. And when did they come back?
Yeah, well, I think then went on to. I think the plan is they go into Australia. I think that's where they were going to. So I think they just went off to shore again there. I think there was different rules in Australia, so they were allowed off for the duration. And then I think they went off like to different kind of little pocket islands off of that, like when they went to the Bahamas and stuff like that.
Oh, lovely. Stretch your legs over there. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit more relaxed, I think, COVID-wise. So I think they could probably go to the beach and bar. But their own mission was just keeping COVID off the ships. It wasn't so much actually getting it on the mainlands. It was just make sure not to bring it back on aboard.
I tell you what, though, I'm kind of glad that the ships are behind me. And if I hadn't have been let go of in the fashion I had been, who knows? I said to the other, one of my other guests, I might still be working on them. Who knows? But they're behind me. I had my experience. I'm always forever grateful I've had those experiences. But my God, during that time, COVID was a few years ago now. But it feels like it was only yesterday that we're all locked in. Like, I still remember that vividly. But I just feel so bad for the youth that had to go through that. They had nothing to look forward to. And then as soon as they come out, a couple of years later, Sunak's saying, like, you're going to get conscripted. It's like, bloody hell, poor kids.
It is a tough time to be a young person. I mean, like obviously I'm late 20s now, but, I had a little bit of disruption when I was at uni. I mean, I was there for 4 years. So I kind of had 3 kind of normal years and then 1 kind of not so normal. But yeah, especially like maybe like the 18s to maybe 25s.
Was that 1 year of not so normal behaviour, a bit more experimentational?
Miss Moneypenny.
Sorry,
no.
I did it again.
That was 1 year of me sitting in my room and my university room, just being concerned. And you would have, I think that was it. You were allowed like 6 people to your uni flat, but I think once we had like 7. And one of my friend's rooms was like not assigned to like there was no windows. So we're thinking like there was a knock at the door and it was like, how the hell? And we could see it was a warden outside. And obviously they have their own keys. They were coming in, but luckily we shoved one of our friends into a room, put him under the bed. So there was only 6 of us. And they just did it randomly. They didn't even we thought someone might have seen us go in, or someone's grasped on us, or there's no windows or anything. But no, that was a weird year. That time of uni, it was all on Zooms, and even the Navy was all on Zooms. You're learning about ships, staring at a computer screen at home, and then you're like, oh, it's Thursday. It's 6 o'clock. Time to clap for the NHS, everyone.
Yeah.
Remember that? Isn't it mad? It's like nearly 5 years ago, isn't it? COVID.
Bang your pots and pans. Yeah. It's been a few years. But so, what was your title? Did you have a position? This is what you are.
Yeah, Officer Cadet Edwards. I've actually got. I don't think I should probably show you. Actually, I've got my veterans card here, but
oh,
there you go. Can you? Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah,
veterans card, and that is quite funny.
It says really, expired on the corner. Oh no, that's the expiry date.
Expiry date, which is the 10th of November, 2033.
2033. So what? Yeah. How long does it take till you can what do you call it? Extend it? Like, do you go in for some kind of physical?
That is actually a really valid question, because I don't know. Like, are you not a veteran after 2023?
2033.
Even?
Well, are they just hoping that you expire by that point?
Yeah, probably. It's like, oh yeah, so you can't get any discounts or anything. Okay, great.
So it's good. It's good for like nothing, or what is it good for?
I think it gets you. I mean, I haven't really looked into it, but I think it gets you
20% off. 20% off at JD Sports.
Yeah, and I think my friend James, who I'd served with in my time there, because it is a bit laughing really that I'm technically a veteran, where all I did was I was an officer cadet, where actually there's real people who serve like for how many years. They are the real veterans. My friend had his veterans card, and I think another naval officer, been in the Navy 50 plus years. It's like, oh, son, where did you serve? Where did you go? Like, and he's like university. And he was just like, he felt so embarrassed. Like, yeah. Goes, oh, they're giving these veterans cards left, right, and centre nowadays.
What was that? It's like that the TV show The Pacific.
Yeah, the Band of Brothers spin-off.
Yeah, the Band of Brothers spin-off, exactly. I watched that recently for the first time, and it's like in the last episode or the penultimate episode, and that kid comes out of what's the academy? Is it Cross Point?
Yeah.
Is it Cross Point?
We were looking for West Point. West Point.
And he comes in all high and mighty, and they've all been through the shit, and he wants to prove himself. It's like, well, too late, mate. The war's basically over. But, you could say you kind of sat through also a mock-up Napoleonic battle. I could say I was technically a victim of casualty. What do they call it?
You definitely were.
Yeah, and I won't say about it on here. But yeah, they'll shut us down, Liam. They'll shut this whole thing down if I talk about... So how many ships did you work on go on in your time?
So I went on HMS Prince of Wales. I went on RFA Tide Force. And there is a difference between, people didn't know the difference between Royal Navy and Royal Fleet Auxiliary.
Oh, I know the difference. The Royal Fleet Auxiliary is basically the Navy's shopping centre on sea.
Yeah.
They're not combatants. They're there to provide all the supplies like toilet paper, food.
They are basically just civvies. So they're not part of the RN in any way, shape, or form.
Mm.
So went on that, and then I'll talk about the two stories of the two ships I had probably the best memories on. So one of the first was the RFA Tide Force. So we went off in January in Plymouth, and we basically just went up to the Isle of Wight and hovered back round again. But we were basically doing protection through like the English Channel and stuff like that. And that was really interesting because we was up at 6 a.m. And it is mad because people, and it's probably the same in the hospitality industry on cruises, where you're basically doing 7 days a week.
Yes. And
you obviously work for about 4 months. And then within RN or the RFA, you would then have 3 months off, basically, usually. But it's 7 days a week. And that was a bit that I kind of couldn't get my head around at first. I was like, my God, this is like mental. But we basically were doing different things, how, the maintenance of the ships, that go down to the engine room, where basically it was a hot pot. And one of the engineers on board was saying, yeah, try being in the engineer room when you're in the Gulf of Oman in the middle of the summer, you think it's warm now, you don't know anything. It's literally, I think they could only be there for like 10 minutes. But sometimes it took you like 10 minutes just to get to one part of the engine. Yeah, that's a hard job.
Engine rooms on any ship have always been kind of notoriously the place to, well, whenever depicted in film, you can
Titanic,
see.
Titanic being the best.
Yeah, but those were like, naval stokers. My nan's dad was a naval stoker. He went up a few ranks and he did love it, but he came back and met my nan. And so, yeah, I come from a stoking family in a sense.
It's a hard gig, whether you like.
If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Did you ever see that film? Tim Roth was in it. It's quite a long film, but it's basically Tim Roth. He's born on a cruise ship, but they find him in like the engine room as a newborn on 1900, something of 1900, the legend of 1900. So he's born, and they find him in the engine room. This won't make the edit, but this is for you anyway, because it's like it's a cruise ship film. It's quite a nice sentiment towards the end as well. He basically lives his life on the ship, and he doesn't get off, doesn't go anywhere, and he learns to play the piano incredibly, and no one knows who taught him, and he just doesn't really see the need to go anywhere because he sees people kind of coming on the ship and they're all in their element, having a wonderful time, and they're all trying to get somewhere, but he's like, where are you trying to get to?
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of a good ethos, isn't it, to being on ship? I mean, look, when I was on, the RFA Typhals, it's only a week, but you are, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no signal. It's just you and your shipmates, and that's it, really. And that is weird. It's hard to explain to somebody. You have
it's like being on set sometimes when you're not allowed your phone.
Well, we usually sneak a second one in. No, but it's and that is a good actual correlation, because even on set, you are like, when you're filming, you're just in another world itself. But definitely on ship, it is like that hub, that is your team. You have your DVD nights, you go to the bar afterwards, but it's all there, and you don't know what's going on in the real world, which is hard to explain to people sometimes who haven't actually experienced that.
Well, if you have a job on land, chances are potentially you don't like your colleagues. As soon as you're done with the day's work, you're going, right, bye. I'm going home now to be with my wife and kids, or my friends who I do like. When's that work meeting, team gathering for the pub quiz? Oh, yeah, I'm busy. Yeah, I'm sorry, I've got plans. I can't make it. But your colleagues on board the ship, whether cruise or navy or whatever, you have to get on, because you're going to be really lonely if you can't make friends. So that camaraderie is born out of necessity rather than anything else. It's like, okay, I got to make nice.
People on you work on ships, their actual resilience and preparation to just put all of it aside to be friendly with people, or even if you get into a mini scuffle, to find level ground, because you have to. And if sometimes you have to give up your own ego or even your own side where you think you're 100% right, just for your own sanity and well-being, sometimes it's just better just to put it aside. Obviously, I know that is different on certain circumstances, but if it's just like a nit-nat and you're just like poking fun at each other and it gets a bit out of hand, you just make peace. But that does tie in quite well, because I'll get a bit back onto the Tide Force in a minute, but obviously I went on the P2000s, and they're basically the training vessels which are used in the RN, and they'll be used a lot for like NATO deployments when they're doing operations with other countries. But one thing with those are they're very, very small. Could have up to a crew of about, let's say, 8 to 10 sometimes. And that won't sound like a lot. But on a P2000, that's really a lot, because basically all you have is the top of the ship where they steer. So it's outside the steering. Obviously, you can steer inside if the weather's torrential, but they usually do it outside. Then you have the bit in the middle, it's like the navigation systems, very small again. And then you have the downstairs, which is like the little mess hall. And when I say the kitchen size is smaller than my bedroom, basically. So the kitchen size and the little restaurant room. But the worst parts were the beds, and the beds were basically like coffins. You had one like on the bottom, and then one kind of like above, but on the side. And I was like, I'm just going to go in the bottom, because it felt more like a bed. Like the one above, it was like curved at the top, so even if you want to like roll over, you were stuck. And I was just like, not for me. But I didn't realize that I had like the wooden cabin on the bottom, like right on my shoulder. So to the point I was literally like this, and I was just trying to maneuver. And it was, you had all your luggage in there and trying to get to the loo, which I will get onto as well, which there's quite a funny story on that. But the
But
P2000,
basically, if you want to get some experience on knowing what it's like to live in a rental apartment in any major city, like London, example,
yeah.
then go and join the Royal Navy because that's pretty good experience.
If you fancy going to New York, Brooklyn, and want to live in a place where everything's in one room,
Yeah.
the RN is the place to go. But the one thing I did notice, and this is anywhere in society, so be it film or media or anything, is the hierarchy. And I was an officer cadet at uni still. Most of the officers are all, well, some could be 20, 21, 22, 23. And I was probably 26 at the time. And there was like sub-lieutenant, lieutenants on board, but all privately educated, all came from Dartmouth and all had a chip on their shoulder and very high egos. And there was a few times where, there's things they say to you in, in a bit of an aggressive manner or tone. I get it. It's the military. You're not in a playground centre. Basically, they come with a bit of a authoritarianism. What's the word? Authoritarianism. I'm trying to use big fancy words, and it always
You can do what you like, mate. I'll edit it to obviously.
No, it's in it, but it comes to the point, like the respect level and the morale. And when you mentioned about you work and live with these people, I mean, after a week, as much as I enjoyed when we ventured off into Copenhagen for the day, some of the random places we stopped in Sweden, I ended up in a nightclub in Sweden, and like it was this school proms leavers summer do. In Kelseriken, I think it was, in Sweden, random place. And they're like, what are you British people doing here? We never have British people here. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's where your naval ship bases are. They're in the middle of nowhere. But it's great. That's the part that is fun. But then it's back to the day job. And there was a few, older blokes who were just taking the piss all the time. And, you were students, so they're trying to show a bit of like, bullish. But I was just like, it's a bit of a facade and an image. And I think that's what does put people off. And then they go back to civvy life because they can get better money, they'll have a trade, and they can go elsewhere with that. So yeah, that is quite tricky sometimes.
But you don't look back on your time as wasted.
No, not at all. I went on skiing trips, at sports weekends. We went around when we went to Denmark and Germany, Flensburg, their naval bits HQ there. That was great. On RFA Tide Force, we were tracking the Russians. That was quite a cool story. When they came into English Channel waters, we were tracking the Russian oil tanker that I think was fueled up. I think there was like a new Trident ship that the Russian Navy have made, and they would basically just come back from filling that up. But it was incredible to see that. I think it was like a Wednesday night. I had like the infrared goggles on. Like it proper felt like Call of Duty kid kind of stuff. And that's the elements are quite cool. And the stereotypes when we think of military, it's, guns and infrared stuff. So that is quite cool.
Tom Clancy, Splinter Cell.
Basically, yeah. Who's the bloke in Call of Duty? I always remember it. Was it Captain? He's like, we're going to go in there and get the mission done now.
Oh, that's every guy.
That's all of them. Well, I think is it Price? Captain Price, I think his name was.
I don't know. It's been going so long, Liam. I haven't played it in a while. I've only got the version on my phone at the moment.
Can't even keep up nowadays. But yeah, it's things like that were pretty awesome within the RN. But there is definitely a hierarchy thing and a respect thing.
Yeah, that goes without saying, though. You see that in every film. You see the grunts doing all the heavy lifting, and the officers kind of like.
Well, we had to cook for them every night. That was always the thing: clean everything and do everything.
But so you've got a couple of ships under your belt over the 4 years in the RN. Was there a favourite ship?
I think just for the camaraderie from Tide Force, to be honest, and that wasn't even like, that was more the civvies. So the ones who aren't actually even in the RN. They're the ones who are out in the cold Atlantic when it's minus degrees. And we had to do like heavy lifting out on the deck. Weather wasn't great. Tying up ropes, obviously learning all the rope, which is a talent of itself. Coordinates that you have to do to tie stuff up. But these guys, I was thinking, like, they're mainly all in their 40s, 50s, or 60s. And I said, for the younger generation, there was like one young lad from Liverpool who was like 19, but that was it. And I was like, these guys are in their 60s and they're working on this stuff. When they retire and go, who's like going to do these jobs? Because I just don't think it's appealing to young people in the slightest. Generations have changed, whether you like it or not. And I'm just like, it's mad. There was just one lad from Liverpool who was 19 doing that kind of hard labor out in the cold. You know, they're all up in their little cabin there at 6 a.m, ready for work for their cup of tea. And then they just go out into any weather, basically, unless it's literally like torrential that they could fly off the side of the ship. But they just get on with it. And it's just amazing. It was actually quite incredible to see. You have, let's be honest, there are differences in our generations to theirs because
Well, there's a big difference in the generational gap in that younger people now, they're not quick to offer their respect to anyone because they're of the mentality that your respect is earned. Whereas if you go abroad to a lot of other countries, if you're older than someone, respect is a given because it's that kind of, okay, yes, you are my senior, I should respect what you have to say within reason. Obviously, if they're a 60-year-old crackhead, then
in Japan, they still bow to them. Would you believe?
No, it's a difference of mentality over here. We don't give our respect so willingly, where it should always be respect your elders. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think we're quite a rude nation nowadays, and I've seen that change over the last 10 years. And you can say that's societal reasons and X, Y, Z, and I think factors like cost of living, COVID, and all that kind of stuff does play into it.
But it doesn't help to be rude, and I think that's what ships taught me is, well, just manners cost nothing, and they get you far further in life than being rude to people.
Manners maketh man, isn't it? That's kind of in the Kingsman. I think military. When we talk about service and obviously what Rishi Sunak's been talking about, I think he worded it in the wrong way in the sense of, that's 1 year in the military. I actually think the initiative of helping in your community for 1 year or doing so, I do think that is a fairly good thing. I agree. I don't think there's no point forcing people into military and making them serve if they don't want to be there, because that just brings down mood and morale in military. You need people to be there who want to be there and want to work. So I think it's good in a way, but I just think it was worded very wrong.
So let's talk about bad weather, because you don't have, I'm guessing, to put up with a lot of guests on board. You have the hierarchy of the people that were privately educated, and that's the same equivalent, I guess, with having to put up with shit. But what about stormy seas? Did you have any close calls, or did you get put on fog watch?
We were pretty good, actually. It's quite foggy on Tide Force, but when you're on larger ships, you have more kind of senior personnel to deal with that.
Yeah.
When you're on the P2000s, it's a bit more tricky. But we were very lucky because obviously we was out. I'm trying to think of the name of the sea. Well, at least you had it in my mind. Around Norway and Denmark and Germany. Baltics, the Baltics. And only one of the days it was, this will now lead into this. You've reminded me of a story. So on my first day, seasickness. This might be a bit of a gruesome story to some people. So if you want to skip gruesomeness.
You've already talked about vomit once.
Oh, okay. So basically, first day, and obviously they said about bringing seasick tablets. I've been on sea loads of times. I've never had any problems, and didn't take them. And we just left Germany and was docking in Sweden, and absolutely fine. I think it was like a 6 to 7 hour. We were at sea, and then we docked up, and I had a bit of grub from the day before in Hamburg train station or whatever. But I had food on board, feeling fine. About to dock up, and we had this training officer. I can't remember her name, but she was nice. She was a bit weird, but she would just constantly ask naval questions to you all the time, and it was at the point of insanity where I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'm all about educating, but we've got another 7 hours of this, and we've got another 7 days of being here, so let's just chill out. I'm sure I'm going to learn lots. And she's like, what's the difference between that red flag and that green flag? And they always say, it's seasick, look at the horizon, isn't it? So try and so I did that, and I just felt really rough. And I just said to my training officer, I said, I just feel a bit rough, ma'am. Can I just go downstairs? Which obviously going downstairs is the worst thing to do. You're meant to go up.
We should say that if you're going to look at the horizon, you need to be on the rail looking at the horizon, not inside the lounge or wherever, because you're seeing the window past dip past the horizon. So you go to the rail and you focus on the horizon, and it's not moving, and then in your mind you're steady.
And go to the top of the ship, because that's where it's not as bad. Where if you keep going further down, the seasick gets worse, and that's what I did. So I went to the bottom because there's the only place I could lay down. So I sat there, and this other bloke engineer guy I was sat with, who was looking at me from Sunderland, who's like, ugh. I'm just like, please just don't talk to me. I was just like, I just want to be left alone. Then to the point I was like, okay, I'm going to go in my cabin now. And I was sitting there. I was like, I really don't feel good. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was literally like white as a ghost. And I was like, oh, I really don't feel good. And by this point, I didn't know if it was being sick or if it was coming out the other end. So I'm in this little cubicle toilet, like I kid you not, it's the smallest thing ever, like just like smaller than like film portaloos, like it was just mental. And they had the shower in there as well.
Wow.
I'm sat there and I'm like, the lock wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And people can come in any time. I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. So trousers were down. I'm holding the door like this. And then I said, I don't think it's the other way. I think it's more out this way. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go to stand up, sit back down again. I'm like, okay, let me put my head down the bog. And as soon as I go to turn my head to the bog, it was just that profuse sickness of just like without even you acknowledging it, just covered everywhere. All of this thing. I was like, oh my God. Door's like gone open. So I had to grab the door. All in there while the ship's still hitting the waves like this. Pants are still down. And I've just finished being sick like a minute later. And I'm like, oh, that was just awful. That was terrible. And then to the point of, I'll never forget it. I mean, my head's in the bowl, sick everywhere. I'm sorry if anyone's watching this while eating. And then look to my right, and the door's flown back open. And there's just my senior officer stood at the door, looking down like, oh, for fuck's sake. Me basically down on all fours, looking at that. I was just like, I'm so sorry. He said, oh, just sort yourself out. I've seen a lot worse, and closed the door. And that is the thing in the military. You can do the most stupidest of things, embarrassing things. They've seen it all, so especially senior officers.
But what? Hang on, go back a second, because you said it was common knowledge to go down to the bottom of the ship.
No, I said it's common knowledge to go to the top of the ship, but where my laying down, where anywhere I could lay down was at the bottom of the ship. Literally, the P2000, you had the living quarters, like kitchen and living quarters, and then it was like the navigational bit, and then there was the where they were steering the ship. But it's literally like so small. I'll send you an image of how small they are.
But if you think about it logistically or logically, a ship is like this. If it's tilting, surely the higher up you are, the more you're going to feel that sway, because you're just going to be rocking side to side in the bottom, and if you're at the top, you're going to be like moving left and right a lot more. Do you know what I mean?
Yes and no. I get that logic, but they say it's because you go to the top, it's like you can see the horizon better. So it's obviously where at the bottom of the ship, I think it's more to do with your vision. I think you probably feel it more at the bottom because you're actually hitting the waves a lot harder. And I think it's just the motion senses. That's what it kind of comes down to. Well, that's what they were telling me anyway.
I mean, I embrace it. I quite liked stormy weather.
Oh yeah, I think it's one of those things you get used to, isn't it? I think, but with me, I was probably just a bit naive and thought. And then I wasn't sick again on the trip. I did take my seasickness tablets. I had to clean the toilet for, I think it took me an hour and a half, 2 hours, because in the RN, cleaning has to be immaculate. I had to get rid of the smell and everything. And yeah, it wasn't particularly pleasant, but it was quite amusing. And I basically painted the bathroom yellow. Did
you acquire a new nickname because of that incident?
No, I was called. I didn't. So obviously, name is Liam Edwards, and apparently there was a famous naval sailor called Bungy Edwards. Never heard of him, but they all knew him, and so I was actually called Bungy. And there was quite a lot of people, Northerners, on board, and they'd go like, "Oi, Bungy, can you get me a cup of tea, lad? Hey, Bungy!" And to the point, sometimes I say Bungy, and I completely forget that that's me. And like, Bungy, get up on the ship now, get on top deck, Bungy.
It's got a good Northern.
Shit, that's me.
You're part Northern.
I am.
So, did you ever find out why they were calling you Bungy? Was Bungy famous for something that you shouldn't have?
No, there was a sailor back in the day. I don't know what the correlation was, if it was from a TV series or actually a real serving sailor. I think it's Bungy Edwards. I'll search it.
That's all right. I wanted to ask you, was there any initiations that you got put through when you was on board?
You know what? There wasn't really, and I'd probably say that because I was more kind of an officer cadet. I would imagine if you're full-time, I mean, look, we had a lot of Trafalgar nights in Oxford, so it's like the big fancy dinners where you dress up in black tie, and we had a lot of military convention dinners in the Oxford colleges. We'd have a lot of military personnel from America. We'd have Hudson dinners, Trafalgar night. We'd have like end-of-term dinners. So they were the social element were a big part of the RN days, and the games we used to play were pretty brutal. I mean, what was the game? It was one of the games like you had to run to the pole, go around it 10 times, go to the bar, neck a pint, run back, do it again, and then tag, next person goes. And that was literally like Armageddon to the point. I did it one year and I was like, I'm never doing this again. There's the game also where you lock arms and you'll pull together and there'll be like a capsule in the middle and whoever knocks over the capsule goes out. So then by the end of that, your arms are like red raw. And yeah, it was just a load of stuff like that. It was, yeah.
But no such naval tradition type of thing to the point where it was like well, talking about wooden ships, like they had traditions that were barbaric, crossing the equator parties, those kind of deals.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's really boring, man. I mean, on the P2000s, the only thing we did was we had like a wooden ledge, and we basically reincarnated what was a wooden ledge, like a plinth that went out into the sea. We just reincarnated like a Peter Pan sketch of pretending to be tied up, and I'd be walking. I did a scene where we was walking off in our underwear, and the prisoner may now die, and I'd pretend to go off the side and hopefully not die, because they did actually tie my hands up, but I could just go like that. They didn't. It wasn't actually.
Yeah. You were safe, but you were just on a plinth in your underwear with your hands fakely bound.
Yeah.
Pretend bound. Was that your one other than the puking and that little pretend incident with the fake bondage? What was your more embarrassing? Was there another more embarrassing moment? I'm guessing. Well,
I mean, there's always times where, obviously when we did the military parade in Oxford, I think it was the first one I ever did, and there was it was just like a romantic scene out of Love Actually or something. But there was this one sailor chap in front of me called Henry, and I'll never forget it. He basically didn't eat that much beforehand and was out late in the evening, and obviously it's very early in the morning, the parade. He's standing for about 2 hours, and he's starting to pass out. And I was kind of like, when you're just focusing, but you're just kind of in a daze because you're just going on and on, but you're just very present, but not. And then he literally like hit the guy behind me without him noticing. And then the guy behind me kind of just fell into my arms. So it was just like this domino ripple effect, basically, of the Remembrance Sunday parade. And I'd never forget that. It was just funny moment, just a lot of just like whacking your head on the art, or just clumsy stuff. I mean, that is the kind of environment when you're working on shift, isn't it? And obviously,
that was another thing though. I think when I was applying to be in the Navy, there was a day I got to go on the HMS Bullock, which was in the Thames.
Yeah,
and I'm 6 foot, like yourself, just over, but they're small ships, and you got to watch when you're going up and down those ladders. The back of your head can hit a hatch or something if you're not carefully ducked in as you're ascending or descending staircases, because it's all very compact. I don't know how you would expect someone who's much taller than yourself to really fit into those cabins, because the beds are small. You get one drawer to yourself. That's all your belongings in one place. You don't have no wardrobes. No, just one little locker, isn't it?
It's mad. And there were people who were taller than me, But I mean, look, the Ernus are made solely for officers who want to go into the RN full time, go to Dartmouth, and quite a lot of my friends have done that. But you always know, like, the sailors are about the posh ones because they're wearing coloured chinos, and a polo shirt, and they're all at the pub and their barber jackets on, and they're like,
and they've got the cricket jumper jersey tied over their shoulders.
Yeah. And there, I think like Charlie, he's only an engineer at Plymouth. I knew him through a friend. And it's just like, you got the hierarchy officers. And he said some officers are just in it for 5 years and they'll be gone. And some are in it just they love the naval world. They love ships. But there is a lot of odd people also in Navy. There is a defo hierarchy thing. There are a lot of great people, do great things to this country, incredible service, good people. But I do think there is a thing with young ego officers and how they talk to you and stuff. And I'm just thinking, if we weren't in the military, I'd just be punching you in the face. And I'm not a violent person by any regard, but they do things they say and do.
They push your buttons. Do you remember like when we did the Napoleon boot camp?
Yeah.
There was guys who were like, ex-military talking to us like we were in the military. He's like, mate, chill out. This is a pretend war. And there's some guy off to the side who's like, do you mind? I went to RADA. It's an amazing performing arts school. And he's not taking any of it.
The good old Paul Biddus and all them paratroopers. I think was it my friend Lewis Meacham? I think he like nearly had a fight with one of them because he just got the two in his face.
Oh, I don't know. Just to add to the end of that Napoleon thing, because people might think I'm taking the piss with the whole actor divide of the hierarchy of the military. There was that kind of overlap where we needed some discipline because there were some people that were just taking the piss, and we were shooting, blank rounds, but we had real gunpowder, flintlock muskets, and if somebody fired it at you or even pretended, then you're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Don't be a twat. Just, be safe. And the health and safety violations on that were atrocious, which is why so many people left. And then they replenished the numbers with people who had just basically said, yeah, I'll do it. It was my first ever job, and I had no training or understanding of what set life was like. And for a lot of us, it was like, well, everything we knew about film life went out the window. Let's get back to ships. What stories have you got that I won't be able to ask you questions that will lead you into it? Because you've probably got a few. Just tell me your best, bits and pieces so I can.
Yeah, I think it was just I mean, I like talking about the kind of senior officers you'd meet, and there was always this one lieutenant in the Navy, and he was in the I'm not sure, I forgot what they call their actual ranks. Basically, he was basically Yeovilton, and that's where they do the Navy, like flying helicopters and Chinooks and all that stuff. So basically, yeah, pilots technically. And he talked about a lot actually about his stories with Prince Harry and Prince William, because they were very much, obviously, I think they were in training school when my lieutenant was as well. And he always said, like, with William, it was always the case of he was much more reserved whenever they went on nights out and stuff like that, because he knew the responsibility of, he was going to be king and stuff like that. But the case of Harry was he just went absolutely mental and, just jumping into lakes, bollock naked in the cold day and drinking whatnot and just letting loose, really. But he said that was kind of quite interesting. And, obviously meeting royalty during his time in the military, and obviously he met obviously Charles quite a lot, and that's obviously his boss. But I think it's just the kind of people that you meet, and I think also the people when I met, like so many people in the army and paratroopers, and these guys have served in like Afghanistan. These are the people, in my opinion, deserve those veteran cards, because they've seen it all, they've given up so much, and the psychological impacts of that, the stuff they would have had to have done and seen, and even people like I've met in filming, like the people who I think, because obviously I know we touched a bit on filming, but a lot of filming hire ex-military as well. Yeah. There was a guy I met, he was a Marine in Afghanistan, and yeah, some of the stuff he said was just horrific, and he gets real bad PTSD. And he says, actually, ironically, getting up at 3 a.m. for these film jobs actually really helps him just stay away from the demons that he has to deal with. Because he told me some of the stories, and I won't go too much into detail because they were quite dark stories, but it was very much the case of, he actually loves working 3 a.m. till 7, 8 at night. He's real grafter, and he was just kind of on the set doing the logistics. And I'll never forget this. He got me craft. He snuck in and got me craft and got me a nice vanilla latte, and just nice bloke. But you could just see like so much torment there. And so yeah, I think that was probably kind of. I mean, I think I've really covered quite a lot of the story aspects. I didn't know if there's anything you want to know in particular about naval stuff compared to maybe the hospitality industry to. Well, warfare, I guess.
I don't know exactly what questions to probe for, because my experience is short-lived in the Navy, and I didn't get to do it.
Do you ever meet Cam Spilsbury? I lived with him in Oxford. He does essay work.
Maybe.
Cut long story short, we lived together in Oxford for a year, and his missus Helen was always around. And basically, when we got to the end of our contract, she was going to be a dancer on a cruise ship. Really big break for her, really great stuff. And I think she was like 3-4 months in, enjoying it, but it's getting a bit tedious, like, the lifestyle and stuff. So Cam went out there to see her. I think they were docked up in Barbados or somewhere like that in the Caribbean islands. And she just really kind of felt a bit low on it in the end, because it was just, you look outside and you got all this glamour on the ship, and then you just go out and just see all the local people who live in these places who just live in poverty. It's not actually a pleasant place, these islands, people just working for nothing, the locals who live there. And then you're back on a ship trying to just entertain people till stupid hours in the morning. And she said there was times where you're working with young people, you just want to go to bed and have your own space, but then the person she's staying with gets in at like 3 a.m, so they're partying all night. And it really echoes on to what we were saying about your life is at sea, and unless you've done it, it takes a lot of willpower, mental strength, on the not so good days. I mean, there are a lot of positives, but on the not so good days, and when you're literally having to entertain all the time,
mm-hmm.
yeah, there's the days you just literally want to put your pillow over your head and just not talk to anybody. And you can't get away from that.
It's probably even worse on Disney ships because they've got different standards of like literally coat hanger smile 24/7. And we were encouraged to be ourselves a bit more with like some of the ships I worked on. They were Thompsons, or you're from Essex, pay up to that, be a bit more, whatever.
Hello, Gov.
If you're a Silver Sea, that's 6-star cuisine, so and service, so pretend you're from Hertfordshire or something. Be better, Sam.
We do that a lot, don't we, in the day to day? It's like when I'm doing me.
Yeah, anyone does the same thing, but they acclimatize to their surroundings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anywhere that you went to during your naval career where the people really didn't want you there, or they really did?
Very good point. So we went to it was a place in Sweden. I can't remember the name of it, but obviously we know around Europe has been a case of refugees going into countries from like Syria and Afghanistan into lots of Germany, be it trying to get into Poland, places like that. But quite a lot ended up in Sweden, in Scandinavia. And there is always that resentment where, people from the Middle East, not all, but may have a look on the British military and look at past wars and have conflict for, what's happened in the Iraq war and so on. And we docked up one night, and I think it was only like opposite next to us was like this football pitch. There's a lot of youth and kids hanging around. And I never forget, me and my friend Dan, because every area I went into, I Googled, I was like, is this a safe area? We went into this one area and I was like, it kind of came back with normal. There's nothing like crazy, a little bit of crime. But we were getting a lot of attention. And obviously when we were just docking up with the ships, there's not like a real security, unless we was actually in a naval base. This one, there wasn't really. We just basically put a flag on the side of it and say, this is MOD property, please do not come aboard. Which they wouldn't have known really what MOD is, but they could probably tell it was military-esque. We was in our uniform, and I was like...
MOD is what? Ministry of Defence?
Ministry of Defence, yeah. And we was in our gear, and we was about to go to the shop and get some sweets. And we got a lot of attention, like very quickly, from about 20 youths, all from kind of Middle East backgrounds. And they were like, oh, where are you from? Where are you from? First, it was just like kind of curious questions. What are you doing here? And we said, oh, we're just naval ships. And we think at first it could have been, there might have been quite a drug ring there. And obviously you can get a lot of stings happen by British military and so on to capture those kind of people. So we always had like this BMW for the whole duration we were there, outside the parking bit where we were docked up, keeping an eye on us, making sure we weren't actually there for while they thought we were there. But it was more kind of curiosity, and there was a lot of people on phones and stuff like that. And that was the point where our senior commander was a little bit like, let's just stay on the ship, I think, this evening and lock up, and I'm sure we'll be fine unless they decide to come aboard. Then we'll use force. But it felt a bit like one bit that did make me quite laugh. It wasn't mine, but I think there was a turd of some sort floating in the sea, and everyone was like, oh, is that your turd just come out of the ship? And I was like, I don't know where that's come from. There we are. But it was quite humorous, that moment. But as more as they would kind of ask questions, it was more like, why are you here? What are you doing here? This is a random part of Sweden. And that was the bit you did have to remember, even if you was like an officer cadet, you are a target when you are military. When you go out, even on a walk to your offices in Oxford or whatever, like you're in your uniform, you've got to zip up. So people who are anti-military who maybe want to hurt you. And we obviously saw that sadly with Lee Rigby in Woolwich many years ago. So it does happen. So yeah, we were definitely in an environment of, I wouldn't say hostility, but curiosity that could have led into a bit of a darker path. Too many questions were kind of like, what you doing here? So they were clued up on who we were, and we're not armed or anything.
But you didn't want to rock the boat, pun intended. You just wanted to kind of get in, get your grub, and get back on board.
Be polite and just but we didn't. We just literally came straight back on board. They were quite nice. One was riding a moped. He was like, jump on my moped, let's go for a ride. I was like, I'm okay, thanks. I wasn't sure if he was interested in me or just, being curious.
He maybe was just like, I've heard the rumor about you sailors.
In the Navy.
Try your luck, mate.
Yeah, it's all fun and games, but no, it's that was probably a bit of a tense moment I may have experienced.
Well, what about the opposite, when you went to a place and they were like, "Oh, thank God you're here"? Were you like deploying rations or care packages to anyone?
I didn't. I've not. Yeah, I haven't done so much humanitarian aspect. I mean, that would be it always happens. They have hurricanes in like the Caribbean and places like that. So I spoke to a lot of personnel who goes to these places, and yeah, it's sad because they build up their villages or whatever where they live, and then the hurricane comes around the following year, and it's back to square one. And the Navy goes over, gives them stuff, and they're always thankful. And obviously, we're part of the Commonwealth, aren't we? So we help where we can to so many countries. It's not just the UK, but
No.
I never did
So
humanitarian stuff.
what countries do fall into the Commonwealth? Let's just list them so we don't miss anyone off. Do you know them all off by heart?
I couldn't. I've probably just named you about 3 or 4.
This
So
is-
it was Britain, isn't it? And then Australia,
New Zealand,
New Zealand, Canada,
Fiji.
Fiji. It's more like African nations to be honest. And obviously, this kind of falls into the remit of my now day-to-day work.
Yes, let's talk about that real quick if we can.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm security team coordinator at the Royal Household. So based at Buckingham Palace. I can't obviously go into too much detail for obvious
No.
reasons. Yeah, so basically it's in a brief thing, it's just coordinating, and it's more an administrational role basically, for to help security for like events that happen within the royal household. And yeah, it's an awesome job. Is day to day things change. You could be working on a garden party, even then could be working on a garter day, which we had at Windsor Castle, which has been a tradition for years on years. So yeah, you get to see a lot of stuff, hear a lot of stuff. It's a big operation whenever anything, obviously royal family involved, but it tied in quite well. And actually probably my military days at sea probably helped me in a weird way get that role.
Yeah, but it's a new position that you've just literally inhabited over the last couple of weeks, months.
It's literally 2 months today. It's the 22nd today, isn't it? Yeah, so 2 months today.
2 months today.
Hey,
how you finding it?
It's good, and it's weird, isn't it? Because I did so much of the extra work during uni days, which I loved, and I do love being on sets and filming, and obviously being with you guys, and seeing old faces. But yeah, it's good. It's just getting into the routine of a 5-day week. You're doing 9 to 5, sometimes longer nights if it's an event. We've got the state visit of the Emperor and Empress of Japan next week, so there's been a lot of preparation for that, big state dinner and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a good role. It's formed quite well in what I studied at uni. I studied criminology at uni, so it ties in quite well with the job role. But yeah, it's fast paced, it's demanding. It's just the environment you're in. You just get on with it, and yeah, it's one of those roles that you look back in your older years and you're kind of part of that mini bit of history.
Yeah, that must be nice, especially as you are. Well, you're not anti-royal. You're pro-royal.
Yeah, no, I'm pro monarchy. Obviously, I'm pro royal. I mean, look, who knows? There could be people in there that aren't, but just do it as a job and as a role. But that's the beauty of the country we live in, isn't it? We live in a democracy. We live in a free world. I mean, there was the "Not My King" protesters at the Troop in the Colour.
Is there any truth to the royal family are lizards theory?
What's that?
You never heard that? They're like reptilian overlords.
No, I've never heard.
Have you never heard them? Oh my god, the internet's a fucked up place, Liam.
Did you like pre-COVID? Is this the?
No. This is kind of like one of those. You've got your conspiracy theorists, and then there's like the conspiracy theorists, the conspiracies. Like,
people always like, "Where's Kate Middleton?" I'm like,
she's just got a cold. She's hanging. She's
Yeah, she's fine. I mean, we like I say, everyone thinks I get updates on all these things. Like I get updates on what's for lunch the next day. That's the thing. Things we have running commentaries on the individuals. Yeah, no, it's an interesting role, and yeah, like I say, like they're not my king. We live in a free democracy where people can say their piece on that. We're not North Korea. We don't shut it down. We don't move it aside, whether you agree with it or not. But that is one of the joys of this country. We live in a democracy. Where you can be sure.
And also the point to probably make is like if you are anti-royal, a lot of our money from tourism comes because people want to see our monarchy in action. They want to see the pomp and ceremony. So if we take them out, we lose a lot of money from the tourist trade, and we're losing a lot of money in other areas as well with our energy as well. So we need to hold on to something, because what we're going to do is sell them off to Germany.
If you think of the UK, especially American tourists, what do they think of? A cup of tea, Cockney accents, and the king, queen, whatever. It's I think it is a very British thing to be so mundane and gloom on everything in life. Hey, let's put on a bit of a ceremony. Let's celebrate the history and years of this very unique, interesting thing. Literally all our summer tours at Buckingham Palace sold out, I think, within like 20 minutes from tourists. Like they've all been snapped up the tickets because it happens nowhere else in the world. We're a unique country, we're a unique monarchy. And I think it's quite a good thing to have. I know, obviously, I may be from a biased position, but I think it is a good thing to have.
Just don't sing Rule Britannia.
Just don't sing Rule Britannia. BBC problems are the wrong level.
Yeah, they banned that one now, right?
I think they did ban it. Or did they not then get it back on because the BBC, even the interview with the BBC that I had the other day, they asked me, do you have a political affiliation with a party? I was like, flipping hell, all I'm doing is talking for 5 minutes about how I hate Gareth Southgate.
Oh, God. Liam, we've got 1 minute and 25 seconds left, so we're going to have to say our goodbyes and wrap up because otherwise we're going to miss the chance. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us a couple of your stories from your time working on the Royal Navy. I'll probably see you on set at some point soon, another weekend, who knows?
There's always something pops up, doesn't it? Not today, though. Ditched out for that.
Yeah, they needed new faces, Liam. But your face is a face that whenever I see it, it's like, God, dear. It's just, we're always booked on the same jobs together.
Be it a Bollywood show,
yeah,
or be it Haven, whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's it. Gandhi. That was the last thing we did, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah. But we're going to run out of time. So thanks again, Liam. I'll see you on set or somewhere soon, mate.
Pleasure, mate, as always. See you later, buddy.
See you
Goodbye,
later,
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. So there you have it. That wraps it up for this episode of DeckTales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been entertained by the tales of laughter, camaraderie and the occasional stormy sea, then don't forget to subscribe, rate and leave a review. Your feedback helps us to navigate the podcasting waters and continue bringing you these fascinating stories. Before I sign off, if you'd like to share your own stories for future episodes, then I'd love to hear from you. Simply get in touch over the socials because after all, the best stories often come from our listeners. As we navigate through the waters of life, remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, as well as those you choose to share the adventure with. I've been your captain, Sammy Catlin. Until next time, fair winds, smooth sailing, and may your adventures be as unforgettable as those shared here on DeckTales. Bon voyage!